Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I want to be talking to you guys about the lack of accessibility of clean water in Angola, Mali, and Bangladesh, but I'm mainly going to be talking about Angola because that's what I did my project on. So the main problem is Angola and Mali, they don't have access to clean water, they don't have proper sanitation systems, like the ability to wash their hands with soap or go to the bathroom in a proper latrine or toilet. They mainly go outside, or it's a pit latrine close to water sources. And then in Bangladesh, their water is contaminated with heavy metals and arsenic. So in Angola, this problem exists because they had a 27-year-long civil war, and that ended 10 years ago. But during this time, they neglected a lot of the country's infrastructure, especially the water and sanitation systems. So now they're starting to rebuild those systems, but they're neglecting the rural areas. So for my proposal, I focused on rural areas in Angola. So the rural areas in Angola, they do have water boreholes that were put in by the government, but unfortunately a lot of these boreholes don't work anymore, and there's no maintenance that is able to go out and fix these. And the roads are really bad, they're muddy, and there's landmines left over from the war. So like even if there were crews, it'd be really hard for them to get out to fix the holes. And then in Bangladesh, people aren't aware that their water is contaminated, so they don't know they need to treat it, and they also don't know how to treat it or why it's contaminated. If they find out that it's contaminated, they're just told that it's contaminated. And the government in Bangladesh hasn't been working to fix this problem. And it's basically the same type of concept in Mali, where there's no education about how to treat the water, or that the water needs to be treated, or about proper sanitation, and the government hasn't done that much either. So the possible solutions are to start initiating the rotavirus vaccine, and rotavirus is a type of virus that causes diarrhea. It's just one of the viruses or bacteria that causes diarrhea. And oftentimes, water filtration systems, they don't take rotavirus out of the water. And then also education. Education about proper hand hygiene, how to wash hands with soap and water, and also using the bathroom away from water sources and not in your river where you get your water from, and to wash your hands before cooking and after using the bathroom. And also giving out water filters or improving the government's already in place water and sanitation systems. And then in Bangladesh, it was proposed to build a filtration system just to take out the arsenic and other heavy metals, because their water is from wells and it's relatively clean except for the heavy metals. So for my proposal in Angola, I wanted to decrease the rates of diarrheal disease by giving them a water filtration system, so by giving them clean water, and I would do this by distributing taps, Life Straw Family 2.0s, which is a system where the water goes in the top in one tub. It filters through the filter, and then it's stored properly in the bottom. Because another issue in these countries, if they have the clean water, they don't have a proper way to store it, so bacteria starts to grow in it because it's exposed to the air. And then with the Life Straw Family 2.0, there's an area to the side where all the contaminants go to after they've been filtered out, so that can easily be cleaned out without contaminating the rest of the water. And then also there's a picture, it's called a tippy tap, which a lot of developing countries use these because they don't have piped water. And it's basically you have a bottle, and using a candle you can melt the plastic to get it weaker and use a nail to put a hole in it. So instead of having water come pouring out and wasting a lot of water, you just have one little hole that water comes out. So it uses a lot less water than a faucet. And you can easily put it on a twig, and some of them they devise foot pedals, so you can have your foot on the foot pedal and they'll tip it over. And then a bar of soap can be attached to it, so the soap is right there to remind them that they need to use soap when washing their hands. And education is also the main thing that I wanted to implement, educating them on how to use the tippy tap, when to clean it, and then when to wash their hands, and how diarrheal diseases spread through the fecal oral route. And in Bangladesh, one of my classmates came up with a filtration system, which I'm not exactly sure how it works, but basically in Bangladesh, part of their culture is smoking. So there's a lot of cigarette ashes. And within the cigarette ashes, there is aluminum oxide. And this aluminum oxide can be used to pull the heavy metals out. And then cilantro is also put into the filtration system, and it also helps pull out the heavy metals. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's something with the cations are attracted to each other. But if you want to look at her system later, you can. And then in Mali, one of their main problems is having a proper way to store the water. So one of my teammates came up with a way to properly store the water, but I'm not exactly sure what that is because he never told me what it is. So if you guys have any questions, that's basically everything. And I can talk more about Angola if you want me to, because I did my project on.
So Angola, the solution was the thing that the water filters through and is stored properly.
Yep, and it's called A Lifestyle Family 2.0.
Is that like on a every resident will have something like this, or is it kind of like a community thing that maybe?
I was thinking about doing households, but there's not a lot known about the rural areas of Angola and how they live. So before I implemented anything, I would travel to the country and see if there are community areas where they congregated. There's also big, tall community life straws that can be used. So if they all live together around one area, then that would be cheaper instead of giving a smaller one to each household.
Is there
Okay.
is there a problem with water availability in general? Isn't it like desert-like?
In Angola, they actually have a lot of rivers and a lot of yearly rainfall. So they have access to water, it's just not clean water.
Oh.
And then also soap is expensive in Angola because there's no soap factories, so they have to import the soap. So I was thinking about partnering with a soap manufacturer for them to build a soap factory in Angola because I'll provide jobs to people in Angola and also provide them cheaper soap. And Angola also exports stearic acid, which can be used to make soap, the oil part in the soap.
Can't they make soap? Like lye soap?
You can, but lye can also be dangerous to use if there's children around and they don't have a proper way to store it. That's why I opted to building a soap factory instead of having them make the soap themselves.
That would give people jobs.
What's a borehole?
It's like a pipe that comes out of the ground like a hand pump,
Okay.
so the water is able to come out of the ground. But a lot of them don't work, and nobody's going to fix them. Any other question?
You said about the vaccine, like give everyone the vaccine. How feasible is it to give everyone a vaccine?
Actually, in Angola, part of their immunizations, they added the rotavirus to it. So as long as the children are able to go to the hospitals when they're supposed to get vaccines, they'll be given the vaccine. Because most of the people that are dying from diarrheal diseases in Angola are children. And once you get past a certain age, you normally don't die from
So
it.
the supply is not a problem. It's just getting people to the place to.
That's what the government makes it seem like online. But when I travel to the country, I would actually make sure that people are getting the vaccines. And if they're not, I would add that to part of my proposal to distribute the vaccines.
So normally they're getting vaccinated for other things, and they have a pretty good record of doing that.
There is evidence that they have vaccines that they should be getting, and they want to give it to certain people, but I couldn't find any evidence that people were actually getting vaccinated. Because of the Civil War, a lot of the records keeping got lost, or they stopped the record keeping, so it's hard to track it.
Do you know who has to pay for it?
I'm not sure how the healthcare system works.
Okay.
But I know in a lot of developing countries, the children are given the vaccines and they don't have to pay for it, the families don't.